Hey there, thanks again for tuning into this series. I am so excited about the next conversation that I get to have. I am speaking with Diana Alt, and she is someone who I have been connected with on LinkedIn for, I want to say, the past couple years now. And we always show support to each other, and we are very aligned on what leadership means in the workplace and how to foster healthy and safe work environments. I know our conversation is going to be absolutely amazing because she is always providing informational, encouraging, and real talk content on LinkedIn. Let me tell you a little bit more about Diana. Diana is a no BS executive coach and career growth strategist who helps people take charge of aligning life and livelihood. Diana uses over 20 years of experience in corporate product development roles to help people get out on their own way by building confidence, setting boundaries, and casting a vision for an awesome career in life. She believes work should feel good, not like a long, slow march towards oblivion. Diana helps individuals and organizations to make work awesome through her coaching, consulting, and training services. She helps people identify ideal work for them and execute an effective job search strategy. She also helps people identify ways to update the way they work in their current jobs and businesses to align with the life they want. Diana can be reached at dianaalt.com and by LinkedIn. Again, I'll make sure to leave her contact information below because you will want to connect with her, especially after you hear this conversation. Are you ready for it? Here we go. All right.
Alrighty then.
Yes, I am so excited. I have one of my favorite LinkedIn influencers with me here today, Diana Alt. You know how much I adore and admire you, so I'm just grateful that you decided to be a part of this series.
Oh, thank you so much. It is really weird when someone calls me an influencer, though. Like, that's a label I've started hearing about myself maybe like
Hmm.
18 months ago. And I was like, what? Because as soon as I hear influencer, I'm like, I'm not a Kardashian, y'all. So I'm not
But
that pretty for one. But anyway, I guess you're one of my favorite LinkedIn influencers too, because I feel like I'm a fangirl today.
oh, thank you. And I know we'll continue to keep in touch after this. So let's go ahead and dive in. And before we really get started, I know your answer to this, but I want you to share it with everyone listening. Can you share why you said yes and why you decided to be a part of this series?
I said yes to this because I am tired of seeing capable, smart people that want to contribute, that want to work hard and grow their careers, and at the same time have a good life be destroyed by toxic BS at work. I'm sick of it.
Mhm.
I've been there, but I also, I don't even know how many people I've coached over the 9+ years that I've been coaching,
Mhm.
just dozens and dozens and dozens. Like, there's some element of toxicity in virtually every single client that comes to me. I mean, like, in their
Yeah.
situation. My clients aren't toxic. I get rid of that stuff. But it's just so prevalent. And sometimes people label things toxic too quickly,
Mhm.
but also it's still, even if you take out people that are potentially being a little too sensitive, there's just too much of this. Too much.
Right. So
What's
true.
your answer?
Why? My why for
Yeah,
putting
I wanna
together.
hear it. Yeah, we're having a
Oh, okay,
conversation
Diana.
here.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, for me, I have experienced way too many toxic work environments to count, and I've experienced them from all levels. I've been in leadership roles, I've been in frontline roles, and I've been the mid-level manager. And I have many horror stories that I could tell for days and days, probably write a book about. But during my time in those toxic work environments, I met a lot of my colleagues who were also suffering from the damages of them. And when I run into them to this day, there's still trauma there. And a lot of my clients that I've worked with have also been victims of toxic workplaces. And it's one of those
Yeah.
topics that, yeah, it's one of those topics that not enough people talk about. And I've also met people who are like, oh no, that doesn't exist. I've never dealt with that. And I want to get people out of that mind frame and instead realizing, hey, this is a real thing. I'm blessed that I've never had to deal with it, but I need to be compassionate towards others. So that's what I'm really hoping that this whole series does, which is spread awareness. And
Yeah, I'm
uh,
so glad that you're doing it too. One of the things I find really interesting, like I talk to clients a lot about you need the best job for you. I
yeah,
especially since most of my clients are leaders in tech. So they're either like very senior individual contributors that are just rock stars at what they do, they're in management, they're executives. That's kind of my lane because I
okay,
spent 20 years in IT before I went full time into my business. And I overlapped coaching as a side hustle for 5 or 6 years. I don't think we ever know when we started coaching,
right.
but that's what LinkedIn says anyway. Um, but they're the best environment is the environment that is best for you.
Yes.
And so what happens so often is people will look around and they will just be feeling so weighed down by the way they're getting treated in a company, which it can be simply one person that can make your work environment toxic.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be the whole company. It can be just one person that really ruins it for you. And they'll look at others and be like, "Well, they're fine, so why am I not fine?" And then they start turning all of this
Ugh,
angst even more on themselves and, you know, get out. Like, that's it doesn't matter if the guy in the next cube over is fine. Half the time they're not,
right.
but it doesn't matter if they are because they don't pay your bills, they don't hug your kids at night, they don't feed your dog, they don't live your
Exactly.
life, they don't have to explain their blood pressure to their doctor.
Right.
So,
That is
that's
that is so true, and I think often we look for validation whenever we're going through something, so it is nice to know in our minds, like, "Oh, is this person dealing with the same thing, or am I
yeah,
overthinking it?" Because we often blame ourselves first, like, "Maybe I'm
we
being too
do.
sensitive, maybe I'm overthinking it," and then when someone can't validate that for us, then that's when we start to go down that rabbit
Yeah,
hole of
or they
blaming
w
ourselves.
yeah, or they won't validate it because 'cause they're afraid, which is a whole like,
Yes.
that's so meta, I don't even know where to go with that. But
So true.
it's a really big thing, and I'm a Gen Xer, so most of my clients are kind of in that 35 to early 50s kinda range.
Okay.
It's sort of the sweet spot, and I'm in that age where we came home after school and did our own homework and put the lasagna in at 5:30 because our parents
Mhm.
were getting home at 6. That's my generation.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like there's this weird combination of resilience and independence with
Yeah.
this set of people. But at the same time, they turn on themselves about toxicity because they think we were raised with this ethos that if work was fun, they wouldn't call it work. And
Right.
I'm not like toxic is not about fun. Like
Mhm.
you can have a work situation that is not fun for you that is not toxic. Those
Absolutely.
exist. Those exist. So,
So true.
how do you define a toxic workplace?
Toxic is different for everyone. And one of the things that you brought up that I really liked is that validation piece. And the reason why some people can't validate it is because they're used to toxic environments. They may have grown up in a toxic environment. So
Mhm.
for them, this is a walk in the park. Somebody screaming at them, somebody calling them names and insulting them, someone sabotaging them. They might be used to that, and that might get them going, and they enjoy that type of environment. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that you really need to pay attention to what your boundaries are and what crosses the line for you. That's what you really need
Yeah.
to focus on. So if there are things that
I
make
I
you
I
uncomfortable,
agree with that. Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with that. And I think that what's really interesting is discomfort is such a wild thing
yes,
because all growth comes with discomfort.
true.
So often don't you feel like often we are like, this feels weird and I don't know if it's because there's something wrong with it or because I'm in a growth phase. And so we'll hang out in that space at work,
Yes.
not not really knowing like, is this good or bad? And then one day you'll realize, oh yeah, that's not gonna work. That's bad juju.
Oh,
That's bad juju for
absolutely.
sure.
And I think one of the things that you need to ask yourself is, do I want to deal with this long term? Is this how I want to be treated long term? And is this what I want to go through on a consistent basis? And
Yeah.
for me, when I was in
Or
toxic
what I want to
environments,
walk.
Yeah,
But
when I was
please
oh,
continue.
sorry. When I was
We're a little choppy, so if I'm talking over you, I apologize.
no
It's just a
worries.
little the internet is not cooperating fully today.
Exactly, and then
So
it's this headset too. There's a slight delay. It's all good though. But when I was in toxic environments, there were some things for me that I personally could not tolerate and did not want to tolerate long term. I had a supervisor who always insulted everyone on the team and would say mean things, would talk about what you did for work or make fun of things that you enjoyed doing outside of work. It was just insult after insult. She would often insult the way you looked or the way that you dressed. And for me, like that crosses my respect boundary. That doesn't work for me. That's not how I talk to people, and that's not how I want to be talked to. So for me, it was a no go.
you know what's funny is I love that we're having this conversation because I would almost rather have that than some of the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I've dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
Because where my hot button, um, my biggest hot button is people that have that professional that can we swear on this show?
Oh, yeah, it's all
Okay.
good.
So they have that veneer, that brightly polished bullshit
Mm-hmm.
in how they talk. And so it sounds like the words sound professional on the surface, but then what you see is there's really a lot of undermining going on. There's kind of like no one is saying you're a bitch, you're whatever. Like,
Right.
black women can't do that. Like, I'm,
Yep.
sure you've
Yep.
dealt with your whole life. Women can't do that, or that's
Yes.
dumb, or like the overt insults. They do them sideways, or they withhold information or things like that. So one of the worst situations I went, my last corporate job about did me in, and I wish I would have had a Chelsea J in my newsfeed whenever I was working there, because I had two really difficult things to deal with. One is a program manager I started working with, like I was working with her from day one, and at the time, I was a scrum master. And in
Okay.
our company, very deliberately, they set it up that those roles were peers. And some organizations, like project managers or scrum masters, might report to program managers. It
Okay.
was very purposeful that they didn't do it that way, that they respected both people as senior professionals. That was a deal breaker. Like how you put the org chart together sometimes can be a deal breaker for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, great, cool. We can work as peers. You have your focus, I have mine. And like within a couple of weeks, she was telling me all about how really I was dotted line reporting to her and that I was basically her boss. And I mean to tell you, my actual boss, I had a meeting on this calendar with by the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day. I said, I need to understand this because I
Yeah.
still had opportunities that were warm. I've only been there a couple
Right.
of weeks. Like I could have gone back to an offer that I declined or withdrew from. And I was like, is
Exactly.
this true? And he's like, no and never.
Mhm.
And that woman spent 4 years being a pain in my hide. And it wasn't just me.
Mhm.
But there were the way that our organization was structured, there were a lot of other people that had issues with how she treated them. But I was in charge of all reporting and analytics
Okay.
in a scrum master role and then later in a product management role. And so they'd be like, well, Diana's the analytics person, so she can deal with this program manager. And so it just piled and piled and piled on. But she
Yeah.
never was nasty, insulting like you're describing. She was more
Mhm.
underhanded and sideways insults and all this kind of stuff. It was really bad. And then the other person at that company that was very difficult was an executive that I worked for who um, said a lot of the right things in all of our team
Mhm.
meetings, but I uncovered discrimination that was happening on the basis of visa status
Mm.
within the organization, within the engineering organization. And I was in a different organization at the time. And
Okay.
the way our policy worked at our company is you escalate that to your direct manager. And at the time, he was
Mhm.
my direct manager. And so he swore up and down that he had pursued it, like he'd filed all the things, and no investigation was happening. And no investigation was happening. And then he said, well, I'm trying to work it out with his peer executive in the organization. He never spoke to him. So he just lied and lied and lied about the fact that he was pursuing this. And I
Yeah.
shouldn't have trusted it. I should have said, you have 48 hours. If I ever had that again, I'd
Right.
be like, you have 48 hours. And
Mhm.
if I do not hear that an investigation has been started on this, I'm going to HR myself.
Yeah.
And
And
I
put a
will let them
timeline on it.
know, yes, that's what I would do in the future. But that person was considered very nice. He was
Mm,
really conflict averse. And so a
okay.
lot of times conflict averse people have a reputation for being very nice, but like
Yes.
there were a whole host of other issues that I had in that organization, including the fact that it took 2.5 people to replace me because I was so overloaded and I couldn't get help. But the one
Mhm.
that really sticks in my craw is the fact
Yeah.
that he lied about following company policy, and that guy is in the C-suite to this day.
Wow. Wow. And I love us talking about these different perspectives because we all have different triggers.
Yeah,
And I believe it's because we all come with a certain level of trauma from our own lives, right? So for me too,
yeah,
I hate lying. I hate a liar. Do not lie to me because that will just destroy any trust that I had in you. But I think that people need
mhm.
to be very aware of what their triggers are. And if you realize that you're in an environment that could damage you even more instead of helping you grow, that's a toxic environment for you.
GTFO. Yes. What does
Absolutely.
poison do? Slowly kills you. Some
Exactly.
poisons quickly kill you. But
Hmm.
let's be real. Like the really good like all the really good storylines that you either see like on a true crime show or on a fictional show or a movie, poison is slowly killing people. It is not quickly killing people
Absolutely.
most of the time. And I really equate it to slow poison, and because
Hmm.
you don't know it. You don't know that it's
Exactly.
happening until sometimes it's too late. And I've been in a couple of environments where I was considering trying to, like, can I get out on FMLA because of depression and anxiety? And then
Yes.
I go, hold up.
It's
Is
time for
this
me
a
to go.
me problem? Is this a me problem or is it a place problem? And
Hmm.
I've had major depressive disorder. Like, I'm not gonna
Hmm.
lie. I've never really had anxiety. I've never had an anxiety diagnosis. That's always been
Okay.
very, very targeted and situational to like, a big project or something like that. But I've had
Right.
depression for
Hmm.
years. And when you think about, I'm literally considering leaving a good job to go on unpaid leave, is
Yeah.
it actually going to be any better if I come back?
Exactly, and it's not. It never is, but
It's
that's the hopeful
if
nature
it
in it.
was a me problem, if it was a me problem, like if I could identify that a lot of the sources of my depression or the most common things that were difficult for me were not mostly triggered by work,
Right.
sure, maybe a leave would work. But if the whole reason that you want to go on leave from work is because work sucks,
Mhm.
then you need to think about, are you really going to come back? Should you really come back from that leave? So, have you ever had to take leave
I
because
love that.
of this kind of stuff?
So, I
What?
have always been the big mouth in an organization, and I have always been the, "Hey, I'm out of here. This isn't for me. I'm not dealing with it for too long."
Yeah,
So, I have
yeah,
not because I have a short tolerance for that, and life is too short to deal with that.
yeah. Life is too short to work a shitty job is one of my mantras.
Absolutely.
And people will say, that's crass. And I'm like, that is how people talk. I'm like, if you don't
Mhm.
like it in your LinkedIn feed, you can unfollow me. But that's how people sit around. Like, that's what your mom is going to tell you. When you're saying that
Exactly.
my life, I'm having trouble with my life, everything's terrible, my marriage is crumbling because I
Mhm.
work 80 hours a week, the answer is going to be from your wise relative, life is too short to work a crappy job, shitty job, however much they swear. We don't have to dress it up.
We don't, not at all. And we're both raw and unfiltered, so you just kind of get what you get, as many people will be able to
It's
tell. But I know that you've worked with a lot of clients in the past who have worked in toxic work environments. And I'd love to hear what's one of the first things that you do with them, or what's a similarity that you've noticed from
so
those
a
clients?
big similarity that I've noticed. Oh gosh, this is such a good topic. Now I'm like, how should I approach this? So let me start with what I tell.
Okay.
You know, when it's truly a toxic environment, um, even though it's an individual definition, almost always there's more than one person, unless they're in like a tiny company with 5 people or something like that, in which
Yep.
case, You just don't have a big enough sample size.
Mhm.
But almost always there's somebody else. So a lot of times I'll ask, like, have you ever talked to anybody or noticed somebody else seemed uncomfortable with that? Talked to a colleague, heard that people left over that. And so when I poke at some of those questions, what comes up is I want to validate for you that this is a them problem, not a you problem. This is
Yes.
not just you being sensitive. And even if it were, it's still reasonable to want to work somewhere different. But when they hear they're not crazy, that's a big, big thing. And then as far as what to do, one thing I often can do, like even I have had clients that I've declined to work with,
Mm.
because I've said you need to get therapy first. Like I can tell the trauma is oozing off of you.
Mhm.
And I'm not like, there's a lot of people that love to run around and say they're a trauma informed coach. That is
Mhm.
BS. Let's get that on the table. That right there is
Yep.
some BS.
Mhm.
Unless the trauma informed to point someone to an actual certified psychotherapist that
Yes.
specializes, you know, that's okay. But like trying to
Yep.
pretend your 6 week program is going to cure all your career trauma, not okay.
Right.
That's not a thing. But what I have done sometimes is said, well, you clearly have unresolved trauma, and it's more than just this job, because usually people are, they've had a pattern where they've had
Yes.
things happen to them. And I'll say, I need you to either go get therapy for a few months and come back to me, or do it concurrently. And so in my practice, I would say on average, a third of my clients are concurrently in therapy and working with me as a
Good.
coach because
Mhm.
they've got stuff going on. And I had somebody tell me that wasn't good. And I was like, it's not good for people to get therapy?
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
what? Okay, I don't think I need to hang out with you any longer.
Absolutely.
Um, because someday I always say someday I'm gonna have a t-shirt shop, and the first shirt I'm gonna sell is gonna say, all y'all need therapy.
Oh, yes. I'll be the first one in line to buy that.
All right. I need to find someone in my orbit. I don't have time to do it. That's why I've been saying for 3 years I wanted a t-shirt store. So I need to find someone to set it up for me.
Yes.
But yeah, so a lot of times I will suggest to people, the way I explain it is I am a go forward person. Like
Mhm.
most coaches are, we are trying to chart your path forward. Yes,
Mhm.
the context from the past is useful. Yes, you're going to be reflecting on what you enjoy and don't enjoy and are interested in,
Mhm.
and where you felt successful and where you feel purpose and all of that. But I
Mhm.
am not qualified, and this program is not intended to unravel your PTSD from the sexist environment that you were in. That is not, I'm I'm literally violating the law if I pretend that I can do that, because it's unlicensed
Right.
counseling. So I try to make sure people understand the lines. And then I've had people, the programs that I work on, I have several different ones, and they have like deliverables, you get this many sessions, you get this much custom homework, you get access to me via
Mhm.
email or text or carrier pigeon
Yep.
for this many months, that kind of stuff. But I have allowed people to go on pause. I've had people come to me and
Okay.
say, you know what? you, I need to dig on this. I'm not making progress with
No.
figuring out the career direction or leaning into my job search because I really, really need to go and work on some other stuff. And if you're transparent like that with me, I'm going to say, all right, let's put you on hold for 60 days. I'm not going to
Yes.
expire you. Come back in a little bit and we will get you back going. So
I
if you don't have your
love that.
mental, people love to say, like, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything, and they're always, the connotation is always physical health. I'm
Right.
like, if you don't have your mental and emotional health, you don't have anything either.
Exactly. And that mental plays such a big role, especially in our careers, because it really affects how we talk to ourselves too. We can talk ourselves into
Yes,
staying in
that's
toxic situations or leaving.
I d- it's the same dynamic. I told somebody, I'm like, your job sounds like a bad boyfriend. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
told a client, like, or a prospective client or somebody in my community. I can't
Yes.
remember. I ended up working with them, but I can't remember when I said this. But I was like, this sounds like a bad boyfriend.
Yeah.
that's gaslighting you. They tell you you're pretty
Mhm.
and that someday you're gonna get married or promoted, and then they never do
Right.
it. And then they make it a you problem. No.
Yes. They make it a you problem and they convince you that you need to work harder to meet their
Oh,
standards.
yeah, that's my favorite. "Oh, I got a
Mhm.
lawnmower. This is gonna be great." You may have a little lawn mowing in the back.
It's
Hopefully,
all
the
good.
AirPods will help with that. So, my mower guy I have a down tree right now. This is hilarious. I had a
Okay.
storm. I've got, like, a 30-foot branch in my front yard,
Oh,
and I
no.
just watched the mower guy, like, come into my front yard and, like, "I don't know what to do with this." So, mowing
Well, you're
around it.
good. The AirPods work because I can't hear a thing.
Yeah,
So we're
good.
good.
I'm just getting a chuckle out of these guys in my front yard trying to make things happen. Um, where was I? I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, the bad boyfriend, we talked about that, you having to
The bad boyfriend
yeah.
analogy is a really important one. But I'm
Yep.
gonna tell you, here's the kicker. So
Mhm.
that guy that disregarded the discrimination thing that I raised to him.
Yes. Mhm.
So a while later, I left. Basically, within a few weeks of this, they'd hired a new director. So I had another boss that just didn't understand me. And I wouldn't say that was toxic. Like I
Okay.
not right away. The like she
Yeah.
thought I should focus totally on execution, and I'm much more strategic mind. And it was very different from the last director that I'd had.
Mhm.
So eventually, though, I decided to leave. I gave my
Okay.
notice. I knew I was leaving to work full time for myself. So I had an
Mhm.
extended notice, which if I had to do it again, I wouldn't have done. I would have
Okay.
just GTFO because it was
Yes.
the last few weeks were really hard. Thought I
Yes.
wanted the money, it wasn't worth it. But
Mhm.
right before I left, that executive that I had reported to temporarily came into town. He worked in another state and he would come like every
Mhm.
few weeks to spend time. And I
Okay.
requested a meeting with him. And both that situation,
Yeah.
plus some other stuff where I could tell he was uncomfortable because he hated confrontation and I'm going to call out BS, and the
Yes.
whole I was totally overworked and had no support. I
Mhm.
just asked him, I said, you were really critical of me towards the end. The last few months or whatever, you've been
Right.
really critical of my work and how I've been as a professional.
Yeah.
And I just want to know what you wanted me to do because I've been trying to do good work here the whole time and to make this a positive environment for everybody, get my products in order,
Right.
the whole nine. I'm trying to do my job. And he looked me
Yeah.
straight in the face and said, "I don't really know. We made your job awful hard, didn't we?"
No
And I was like,
explanation.
"No explanation."
Mm.
And I was like, here's my take on this.
Mhm.
I think he wanted me out, which is fine. That happens.
Right.
But have some integrity. Don't haze people out. That's one of the most toxic things that companies sometimes do.
Yes.
If you're a leader and you have someone on your team that it's not like the vision this person has for their career and the vision of where this company or department is going are no longer aligned, go to HR, figure out a custom severance, and offer it to them. Tell them, look, thank you for your service. This is not aligned anymore.
Mhm.
I don't want to put you in a bad situation. Here is 6 months of severance and benefits.
Right.
That action will do more for your employer brand than
Yeah.
anything that you could possibly think of. And, you know, it's a high integrity move. It's running
It
toward
is.
I have a one of my mentors and close friends and a guy I've coached, like, you know how it is, all the best
Oh,
people we
yeah.
have like 5 different relationships with. He
Yes.
owns an IT staffing firm, and his
Okay.
mantra and one of the values in the company is run towards trouble. So
Mm.
go face head on that thing that's uncomfortable and do the thing that is uncomfortable, which sometimes can be a difficult conversation that swings the relationship in a positive direction. And
Right.
sometimes can be a conversation that's like, we are not going to work together.
Mhm.
Don't ghost people, don't haze them out. But running
Exactly.
towards trouble can look like we're no longer aligned. You are clearly not happy here. I don't see a place for you. Let's call it. Here is some severance. I want to make
Mhm.
sure that you're okay. I am able to give you a good reference on A, B, and C.
Mhm.
Some of the other areas, maybe not, but I can speak to your strength in A, B, and C. Go with God. If more companies would do that, there would be a hell of a lot less people that get fired without understanding why they're getting fired.
Yes.
There would be less lawsuits that
Mhm.
companies had to defend.
Yep.
There would be less people that are utterly cracking up
Yeah.
because that last 6 to 12 to sometimes longer months where you're trying to
Mhm.
haze somebody out by
Right.
withholding promotions, overloading them, taking all the good projects away, all those other shitty
Mhm.
tactics that people do,
Yep.
you just skip it. You just skip
Exactly.
that part and you let
Exactly.
them go, and then you go find someone that's better aligned and you move forward. So,
Absolutely. And one of the things that I want you to talk about too, Diana, because that, I mean, you just gave companies a complete game
I'm
plan
like,
here.
right here, you have a game plan. And
Exactly.
I'm gonna tell you right now, 6 months of severance with a person that's still healthy is a lot cheaper than a lawsuit. It's a lot better than
Yes.
unemployment. It's a lot better than not being able to hire because that person goes and talks. You know what they say when they
Exactly.
call this? When you do this for people that are no longer aligned, and I'm not talking
Mhm.
about a layoff for economic
Right.
reasons. I'm talking about
Right.
a misalignment, like we're calling this. When you do
Exactly.
that, they say, you know what, that place was no longer for me, but I think it is for you. And they refer people,
Exactly.
they refer
Exactly.
their friends in because they say it was no longer for me, but they had high integrity. We called it. I'm now on to something better. And I think you might like it better than me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look at that for
So,
employer branding. But one of
yeah.
the things that I also want you to highlight, because you mentioned earlier that people have patterns of kind of bouncing from one toxic workplace to the next. So, my question for you is, what are some of the signs that professionals can look out for whenever they're applying for jobs and going through the interview process?
Oh, I love this. I actually have a blog. I'm starting a blog soon. Like
Yay!
everything else, it takes forever, but I'm starting a
Yes.
blog soon. And I want to talk about this. It's one of the things I'm hoping to showcase some content on. I've done a little bit. I have a little mini video series, and I think I've talked about it there too. So the first
Hmm.
thing you need to do is look at your damn self, because especially if you have a pattern. When I see people that have a bouncing pattern,
Hmm.
what usually is going on, I see it a lot. I work with a lot of very high skilled people. They don't have a problem
Hmm.
getting a job. They have a problem getting the right job. So the first thing to do is make sure when you're taking an offer or initiating a job search, even like you can look at it at any point in time in that hiring
Hmm.
cycle, make
Hmm.
sure that you're running, not just running away from something. Like I'm fine with running
Right.
away from a bad environment, but your pull towards something needs to be much stronger than just your pull away.
Yes. That's so good.
If you do that, if you really think about what would it take for me to be truly excited to move into a new role, that's
Mhm.
important advice regardless of whether you are dealing with, okay, yeah, I am leaving a toxic environment, or you're just making a garden variety job move.
Mm,
Um, it's important in either scenario. But yeah,
mhm.
you need to do that to make sure that you know what you're running towards. And I have a
Yes.
model that I'll talk to you about that in a second. You and I talked
Oh,
about it before you hit record. I'll get to that.
yes.
But the thing that I want people to do is define what toxic is for them, and then
Absolutely.
think about all the questions that they tell you not to ask
Mhm.
about culture. Figure out a way to answer them, ask them neutrally.
Yes.
So, for example, walking in and saying, well, I value a diverse environment. So tell me all about your diversity programs, and then deciding that they're toxic if they don't have any.
Right.
What instead you want to do is say, what do I value? I value a feeling of belonging and inclusion and people being treated well.
Mhm.
So I would say, hey, I saw on your website that diversity and inclusion is one of your values. Can you please tell me how that shows up every day
Yes.
at work? Tell
Oh,
me how that
love it.
shows up. Because sometimes there's not programs because there's not money, but you have an ethos and a culture
Right.
where it is lived every day. So we're good, we can do that. But think about the things that are important and don't be afraid to ask questions, because hiring processes are a matchmaking process. It's not a
Exactly.
who can, it's not a beauty contest where presumably everybody that enters Miss America contest is hoping that they're going to get to be Miss America. It
Right.
is a matching process. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't enter 20 beauty pageants in a year, but you might in a job search apply to 20 jobs and you want to find the best
Exactly.
match. So know what you want. Don't be afraid to ask about it respectfully and
Yeah.
withdraw. The minute you're deal breaker, like, don't be like, well, I don't, I have to have domestic partner benefits because I am a, I have to have domestic partner benefits because I am not married, but I have a long-term partner and we
Right.
need it. And get out of that as soon as you figure it out. Just say
Exactly.
no, and say no and say, "I know somebody better." That'll
Mhm.
build your brand as a professional. It keeps you from taking
Yeah.
a bad job, but just identify the behaviors, identify the policies, identify the stuff that is important to you. Ask questions. It doesn't all have to be in the interview cycle. This is what your
Mhm.
one of the things your network is for and what Glassdoor is for and all these other tools, but go
Right.
on a hunt to
Mhm.
ask for this stuff. But if you never define it and you're just
You don't
running
know.
away from something, you don't
Right.
know. You don't know. And if
Right.
you really don't feel like you're in a position, like sometimes you have to get out. Like you have the
Yes.
aha, this is impacting my physical and mental health. This is
Right.
ruining my marriage. My children are struggling at school because I'm not present enough. That kind of stuff.
Right. Yep.
Get the hell out. Go get a contract job for 6 months and
Mhm.
figure your stuff out while you're working
Exactly.
the temp job or take a
Mhm.
break if you can afford it. But don't ever feel bad about going and getting a contract job because it's a step on a path. So, anyway.
Exactly. And you know what? On top of that, I would add ask for support too. I know a lot of people
Yeah,
in those environments, they keep it to themselves whenever, and they try to think through everything on their own. And the truth is, when you're dealing with a toxic work environment, sometimes you can't always think your way through every single thing, and you need an outside
yeah,
perspective or someone who can put you in a position to meet your next employer. So reach out to your community and don't
that's
be
really
afraid to
true.
ask for
I
help.
I love that, and I also think being explicit about what support looks like to
Yes,
anybody. So
exactly.
if you're like, okay, I'm in the middle of a search, I'm hoping I'm out of here in 90 days. But if you have
Mhm.
that work bestie, work wife, work
Right.
husband, work bestie, whatever it is, let them know this is the support I need. I need you to help me remember that I should go home at 5 because the
Yes,
work never ends, but my kids need me. I need you to
exactly.
remind me that it is okay to say no.
Right.
I need you to remind me that when I get yet another project dumped in my lap or micromanage, that it's okay to ask for direction. I
Absolutely.
need you to remind me that we do have a policy, and even if I don't trust HR, I still need to report stuff. I
Yes.
need you, I need you to remind me. I need you to help me. And a lot of it, a lot of the stuff that's toxic,
Mhm.
this is this is not all on the company. And this is
Right.
very important for people to realize. And it's
Mhm.
so difficult to bring this up. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping someone hears this. But
Mhm.
sometimes you make the toxicity worse by not understanding how boundaries actually work.
So true.
So you work on boundaries with people. What is the biggest thing people misunderstand about boundaries? I want
I
your
think
answer.
that's
I'm going to tell you mine. but I want to hear what your observation. What is the biggest thing people misunderstand about boundaries?
well, there's several. So some people don't even know what boundaries are. They don't have
Facts.
theirs clearly defined, which is an issue. And then they also don't hold people to them, so there's no accountability.
Ding, ding, ding. So that last one is the biggest one.
Mhm.
So what I see all the time, and I'm in a lot of different groups on, LinkedIn, Facebook in particular, some other places too, where people talk about this and they'll be like, my workplace is toxic. My boss does not respect my boundaries. I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, are you respecting your boundaries? That's my
And
first question when
yeah,
that
and
comes
did you
up.
say anything? Did you speak
Did you
up?
say anything? Did you
Mhm.
say anything? Did you make it clear? Your boss has 25 people in their department. How do they like that's hard to keep track of.
Exactly.
So, are there some steps you can take to make that clearer to diffuse some of the situations and then people will be like, "Wah, wah, wah, bad leader." And I'm like, "No.
Mhm.
No. Like
Mhm.
you, the most important person to hold your boundary is you. Period. End of
Absolutely.
story.
Always.
The most important person to hold your boundary is you. I remember I emceed a conference last year,
Mhm.
which was fun. I'd never done it before, but I emceed a professional conference here in Kansas City last year. And there were a whole lot of people, like in my opening remarks, at the
Mhm.
beginning, like the president of the organization talked. And then I was like, all right, guys, here's what I need you to do:
Yeah.
put all those phones on do not disturb.
Mhm.
And some people did it. Some
Mhm.
people were like, thumbs up, already did it. And other people are like, I
Yes.
can't do that. I can't do that. And I said, all you people that are saying I can't do that because I have to keep track of stuff,
Mhm.
that right there, your job today is this
Mhm.
conference.
Right.
So you need to set that. You need to send an email right now to your boss that says, I'm in this conference, I'm focused. You paid the money for it. So I'm going to focus
Exactly.
on it.
Yep.
The protocol, if you have an emergency, is
Mhm.
you text me. I'm not getting in my email or whatever that looks like. But your job
Yep.
is to be here today. And if you miss half of it because you go take calls from your boss, that's a you problem 99% of the time. And
Absolutely.
it was a bunch of business analysts. So
Mhm.
the odds of them actually getting pulled out, like for a production incident, which could
Oh, hold
happen
on.
to a CIO.
Hold on. My husband
Doggies.
just made it home. Yes. Hold on for 1 second.
Oh
Oh, can you
shit.
let them out? Thank you. Okay. I'll be out in a little bit. Okay. I was like anticipating their barking.
Yeah. But it's really rare for a business analyst to truly need to be pulled out on an emergency basis. It's
Right.
not going to happen a lot. It could, but it's not going to happen a lot. So there's no reason for 95% of the people in that room to have to worry about that. But how
Absolutely.
many of them had said to their boss, "This is my job for the day. Mary's got my stuff," or "This is how you get a hold of me." And then they wonder why they can't go on
Exactly.
vacation either. So you have to inspect, am I doing the things on my end? There are certainly people that are going to still blow right past it. It's going to be very
Right.
difficult, or you're just going to get tired of constantly having to say the same thing. And that's a reason to consider moving on. But until you do that, you
Mhm.
know, it's that's on you. You still have action you can take. That should be
Absolutely.
which should be make people feel good. Most of the things we get upset about at work are things we can't control.
Right. Very
I
true.
can one of my two of my tips for boundaries whenever I was
Mhm.
overworked are I picked 2 or 3 days a week, every
Mhm.
week, that I would go to the gym, and I
Mm.
would mark out of office. So there's going to the gym, and then there's marking that you're out of office and then going to
Right.
the gym. Because
Exactly.
what would happen is I'd say I'm going to the gym at 5:30, and then someone would book a 5 o'clock meeting, and then I'd say, okay, well, maybe I'll make 6:30, and then I'm too tired and then I don't go. But if I just marked myself out of office at 5 or 4:30, whatever
Mm.
time I needed, 80% of the meeting requests that were landing at that time immediately went away.
See, absolutely.
Immediately. Immediately. And the other 20% were manageable because you could either ask for it to be rescheduled or be like, okay, this time I'm going to do it. And the other thing that I
Right.
did is I do this with my own business.
Mhm.
I do not have my work email on either my tablet or my phone.
Good. So you're not constantly plugged in all
Yeah, it's
day
on
long.
there. It's on there, but I shut the mailbox off. And then if I say, like this morning, I drove to Sonic. I wanted a drink. I hadn't cracked open the laptop yet. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I'll see what's in there. Like, make sure there's nothing from Chelsea. Make sure,
Yep.
make sure I'm set for the day. I looked at it and I went, none of that needs attention in the next hour. I turned it right back off and I went on.
Good.
If something was in there that was a 2 to 5 minute thing, and I'm like, I'm just waiting for my Sonic, I would have taken care of it.
Right.
But that's some stuff that I've done. And that was another area where people will complain, oh, my boss emails me at night. Like, why are you
Why are
looking
you
at your
checking?
email? Why are you checking
Exactly.
that? What are you
Yep.
doing? So, again, I don't mean to oversimplify, but there are a lot of things people can do to make that decompress a little bit. So
I love it. And Diana, I could talk to you for hours and
all
hours and
day, we're
hours.
done.
Yes,
I've
and
got a
you
meeting in a little. I have a client. I have a client in 15 minutes anyway, so we've got to
y-
stop anyhow. But
yes, and you know what? We will definitely do a part 2 to this where we get into that a little bit more. But before you leave, do you
sure.
have any additional words of advice for those who are currently working in toxic work environments?
All right. So my first piece of advice is to figure out something that is not related to your normal stuff to do.
Hmm.
So if your normal is I go to work and it's hard and I work for 9 hours or however long, whether it's at home or whether it's in an office, and then I go home and then I make dinner and then I pet my dogs and take them for a walk and I
Hmm.
hang out with my husband. I'm describing you
Yep.
and what I'm envisioning that you had going on in the past.
Yeah.
Find a pattern interrupt. Even
Hmm.
if it's just once every week or two, find a pattern interrupt because it'll be something to look forward to. So that pattern interrupt could be something as simple as, you know what, I usually call my mama on Sundays. I'm going to call her at lunch on Tuesday. I might ask her if I can call
Yes.
her also at lunch on Tuesday because I don't usually, that's a lighter meeting day and I can talk to my mom for 20 minutes. It could be that you sign up for something you've always wanted to do, those activities that we say, when work slows down, I'll join the improv class. When work slows down, I'll
Yes.
work on my yoga certification. When work slows down, I'll take the trip to wherever. Like I live 3 hours from Branson. So like, when work slows down in a few months, I'll take the kids to Branson.
Right.
Just do it.
I love
Just
that.
do it. If you were gonna end up on a layoff list, like you're not getting put on a layoff list because you took your kids to Branson, because you took a
Right.
Friday off and you took your kids to Branson. You're getting on a layoff list because the company needs to lay off. And stop trying to control stuff that stop trying to control stuff that you can't control. Like, really think about that. But the
Yes.
pattern interrupt is super useful because a lot of people really don't know what they can and can't control. And
Right.
so that can be learned, of course. But if you just get completely away from it, you're
Hmm.
not even thinking about it. Okay,
Right.
I shut the email off and I went to the bowling alley because bowling I suck at, and that's why I want to go because I want to just do something that I don't have to worry about being good at. The kids are gonna have fun, and we're just gonna do that for 2 hours on a Wednesday.
Yes.
It just helps remind yourself. I used to say the best, I don't have any kids, and I used to
Hmm.
say that one of the best treatments for stress was to go have ice cream with a 5-year-old.
Mm.
So I'd go, I don't have any friends with a 5-year-old right now, so I'd have to like go shop for a 5-year-old. But pattern interrupt.
I love
There
that.
you
That's so powerful. And I know for those people who are out there listening and watching this, they're going to be like, I want to work with Diana. So can you please tell people how they can get in touch with you and talk
go. All
about the work
right.
you do?
Oh, the work I do. Oh yeah, I have a company. What? So I am the No BS career growth strategist for leaders. I mostly work with people in tech and tech adjacent fields because I did 20 years in that world. And I do executive coaching, so some performance coaching that can be either tactical or ongoing. And I also have career change and job search programs as well. And I like to be salty on social media, like all of us are.
I
So
love
that's how
it.
you and I met, being salty on LinkedIn. So I mostly do one-on-one work. I am working on some products and also a group coaching program I hope to release later this year. But my goal is that people work should feel good, not like a slog to oblivion. So I work with people to try to figure out what that means to them, how to be productive in that, and how to go out and get it. Um, that's kind of my mission. I want people to have their work and their life aligned. So to find me, LinkedIn's always a really good spot. And I'm sure whatever show notes or whatever you do for this, people can find me there. And then my website is dianaalts.com. And soon there'll be a blog up. It's not there, but probably by the time you publish this, there'll be some blog posts up. But you can either hit me on contact us. My email is also listed there. And if you really are serious about making a change, making your career better, and want to talk about coaching programs, you can click the book call button. So
I
That's
love
it.
it. Yes, thank you so much, Diana, and I will
Thanks a
definitely
ton.
yes, I
Had
will
a
leave
great
all of your
time.
contact information below, and we will be talking again very soon. So I
I'm
appreciate
sure
you
we will.
sharing everything.
Thanks a ton. Thanks a
Yes,
ton.
thank you. Hey there, Chelsea J here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode regarding toxic workplaces. I hope that you enjoyed it. Diana is one of those people that I knew that I would absolutely love meeting and chatting with in person. So I'm glad we got to do that in front of you all today. And as a leadership and executive coach, Diana was able to really provide a lot of actionable tips and a different perspective as far as what toxic means. I love that we talked about toxic means something different to everyone. And you have to know yourself and have a certain level of self awareness and be able to reflect to realize what is for you and what is not for you. Just because something that's toxic is okay with someone else doesn't mean that you have to sit in it and deal with it. At the end of the day, you need to put your mental and emotional health first, and you always need to do what's best for you. I hope this conversation brought you a lot of clarity. I know I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Again, I will leave Diana's contact information below in the description. So if that you want to work with her one-on-one, you have a way to reach out to her and make sure to connect with and follow her on LinkedIn. She provides a lot of amazing content, and I must say that her Tuesday tips are pretty amazing. So don't forget to check those out. All right, thank you again for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. All right, thanks for tuning in.